get a great response to that. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا زدنا علما. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Sadia Z. Yunus. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Alhamdulillah, I've been practicing for over, I guess I would say like 8 years. I have a private practice in Deer Park, right on Deer Park Avenue. And I also do online sessions as well. So I offer individual, couple, and family therapy, as well as workshops and motivational speaking and support groups as well. So if you're interested, I do have my cards here. You're welcome to reach out, even if you have any questions after the program. I know we have a short amount of time and I tend to talk a lot, so I'm not sure if we'll get a lot of time for Q&A, but I want to give you that space as well. Like if any questions come to your mind, if you have anything that you're thinking about and you want to ask about, any of your personal concerns, you're more than welcome to take my card here after the program. I have my number on there, and it's actually a cell number, so you can text, you can email any questions or any concerns that you have. So I wanted to talk today about, the topic is from tragedy to triumph, overcoming personal challenges. And so as I'm going through this, I want you to think about yourself individually. When we hear a talk, oftentimes we think about another person, or we think about how another person can change. But it really is up to us. It is up to us to see how we are going to make a change in our own lives. I think I will sit down, it might be easier. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran in Surah 2, ayat 155 to 157, that we're all very familiar with. Allah says that we will test you with a certain amount of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and life and the fruits of your toil. But give good news to the steadfast, those who when disaster strikes, and it's not just a death, any difficulty, any hardship, even the prick of a thorn, that they say we belong to Allah and to Him we will return. Those are the people who will have blessings and a mercy from their Lord. They're the ones who are guided. Why is this significant? Because each and every one of us, we will be tested. We will be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are guaranteed to be tested. So it's not a talk about like, if this applies to you, if this is what you're going through. Each and every one of us are human beings who've been put on this earth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you will be tested. How we will be tested, that may be different, right? We may go through different things. There's financial struggles, personal struggles, relationship struggles. We may be struggling in our marriages or with our children or family members or co-workers or our boss or in-laws. Anything, right? We each have our own struggles. And you know the beautiful thing about that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows exactly what we're struggling with. That we have this intimate relationship with our Lord, this intimate relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that even if we're sitting next to somebody, and if you look around, you may have no idea what the person even right next to you is struggling with. Because it's not necessarily something that we feel comfortable sharing. Yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. He knows that you're struggling. He knows what you're going through. And He tells us that when we remember Him in that struggle, we will get that reward. We will get that success. And what is that statement? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It's not just a statement. It is us being transcended above dunya and thinking about akhirah. This thing that I'm going through, this struggle with my spouse, this financial difficulty, losing my job, not knowing what the next day is going to hold, having a test with my health, seems to be something that's so difficult, right? Because I'm going through it. But what we know is that it is a matter of dunya. And when we're reminded and we remind ourselves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we know that it's so much deeper and it's so much more. And in the end, we're going to be returning to Allah. So it makes what we're going through not insignificant, because it is significant. It's hard, it's difficult, it's tough. And that's about acknowledging it, that we're human. It's not about like, oh, I just have to suck it up. I just have to deal with it. I just have to have patience. Yes, patience is a part of it, but also acknowledging the human aspect of who we are. That we will struggle, and we will cry, and we will feel, and it's okay. Men and women alike, right? It's okay to feel that. But reminding ourselves of that statement is telling us that there's a greater power and there's a greater purpose. So it's recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence in my life. So when I go through a struggle, it's not just I went through a struggle, but it is what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching me in this moment? What is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn? What am I supposed to gain from this? And tell me this, think about it, is when you reflect back on your life, on a struggle that you went through or a hardship, did you know at that time what you know now about it? When we look back, we're like, wow, I was supposed to go through that so I could get to this place. I went through that and I'm a stronger person because of it. And there's so many examples, but even in my personal life, for example, going through a difficulty of not having confidence, not having high self-esteem. I wasn't always at this place where I could speak in front of an audience and talk about what I know. But going through those difficulties, going through those hardships, having anxiety, having low self-esteem and low self-worth, there was a purpose, because I had to learn and I had to struggle and I had to grow to get somewhere. There's a famous quote by Viktor Frankl, and I want you to reflect on this because it's changed my life and so many others. And he survived being in the Nazi concentration camps. So there's a lot of wisdom in what he says. He said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So between stimulus and response, what is stimulus? We're talking about tests, we're talking about struggles, we're talking about hardships. It can even be something as simple as your spouse saying a rude comment, or your child rolling their eyes at you, their teen rolling their eyes at you. That's the stimulus. Now what is your response going to be? As a believer, as a human being, as somebody who wants to do the right thing, we don't always do it, right? We react. We react in anger, frustration, yelling, or whatever else it is, because we're human, right? Even coming here, there were so many things that were going on. Alhamdulillah, with my 4 kids, things can get a little hectic when we're trying to leave the house. So it was like, okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now. What am I going to do with that, right? I could yell, I could scream, and my kids will probably say I did yell. I was pretty firm, and let's get out of the house, let's get out of here. But I have a choice. I have a choice to how am I going to respond to that? And that's what he says. There's a space there. Something happens. Now we have a choice of how we're going to respond. And then comes the response. And the trick in overcoming difficulties, in succeeding in life, in attaining Jannah, is to widen that space. Something happens and I respond. Do I have a short fuse? Does anger come easily? Do I respond really fast? That's the space not being very large. It's not being very wide. So what we want to do is stretch out that space. When something happens, I want to choose how I want to respond. As a parent, for example, I want to be a loving, a compassionate, an accepting, an affirming parent. That's who I want to be. It doesn't always come out that way, right? Because oftentimes I'll react to something. Milk being spilled, or somebody is yelling at somebody else, or any kind of thing. I can react right away. But if I stretch out that space, then I get to choose how I want to respond based on my principles and values. And as a relationship coach, I help people do that in their relationships. So one example is your spouse, your family member, your child, somebody who is really irritating you in the moment, says something. You can respond right away because you're frustrated, you're angry, you have a right to be, something happened. You can respond right away, which comes easily, or you can communicate to the other person that you need a little bit of time. So you can say, I'm feeling a little overworked right now, I'm feeling a little upset, I'm gonna take a little break and then I'll come back and talk to you. And that's just one of the examples of what I do as a therapist to help people to make a difference in that. So think about that. We get to choose how we're going to respond. So there's a lot of power in that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that. He says that you get to choose how you're going to respond to a situation, and we're going to be judged on that choice. We can't control what happens to us. An illness, a sickness, a death in the family, our child's having trouble in school, financial, I can't pay the bills, I don't know where the money is going to come from. We can't control that completely, right? We may be able to do some things to try to prevent it or try to give ourselves the tools to get through it. But basically what happens to us happens to us. But where we have the power is how we're going to respond. How am I going to respond to the situation? Is it going to be in patience? And many times we say, okay, I need to have patience, but what is sabr? Sabr is that active force. It's not sitting back and waiting for a miracle. It's not sitting back and waiting for a change to happen. It's persevering. It's pushing through the pain, pushing through the trial, so that I can make a change in my life. There's a word that I want everybody to remember. If you don't remember anything else, remember this word, resilience. And the key to get through struggles in life, the key to make it to Jannah, the key to work towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure is that resilience. And resilience is, the definition of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. The capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. What is your resilience level? It's so essential to know yourself and know what that level is. When something happens to me, do I fall into despair? Do I worry so much that I can't handle it anymore and I throw my hands up in the air and I go through a difficulty? And I also just wanted to touch upon mental illness because that can be a factor in resilience. And it's important that we talk about it as a community because if we're not open about it, then the people who are suffering won't feel comfortable opening up about it. We're all human beings. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, or doesn't mean that you are flawed if you struggle in a mental capacity. It means that you're human. Just like a sickness, just like getting the flu or getting the cold, you can have a panic attack or you can have an episode of depression. And yes, it can be more severe, where you need to see a psychiatrist or you need to be hospitalized. But to an extent, we all experience some depressive episodes or moments of anxiety. And of course, again, there's levels. I myself struggle with anxiety. And it's about opening up and being vulnerable ourselves that will open up a space in our community to talk about it. It's okay if you struggle with depression and anxiety. You're human, and everybody has different struggles. And it's just about being open to reaching out for help if you struggle, right? And we all struggle with something. And reaching out for help doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you and you can't figure things out yourself. The Prophet ﷺ himself was a therapist, he was a counselor, in which people turned to him for advice and for help. He is not among us, and may we be with him in Jannah, but it's for us to say, who do we have among us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us as guides, as teachers, as professionals who can help us with these things. So resilience is something that we can increase in ourselves, we can work on, but it's about doing that work. It's about recognizing that I'm not able to bounce back from this. This is really a difficult test, and I'm struggling with it. Being able to say that, being able to recognize it, and then trying to figure out how to build and strengthen our resilience. And there are many, many ways to do that. Here are 20 methods, and of course I don't have enough time to go through them in detail, but I'll pick the ones that I feel will, inshallah, be a bit more important, even though they all are. And this comes from Akshay Nanavati, and of course I've included an Islamic twist to it for us. So 20 methods that will help you change your mindset and overcome challenges in your life and build that resilience, because that's what we're trying to do. Number one is to welcome adversity. And what does it mean to welcome adversity? We talked a little bit about it, how we understand the wisdom behind adversity, that it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we say, who is Allah? It's essential for us to learn who Allah is. How can we love someone if we don't know them and what their characteristics are? So knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to get to know Him. Again, we have this intimate relationship with Allah, but if we don't do our part, then it's really just Allah giving to us and us just completely being cut off. So get to know Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Wadud, the most loving, right? So if He's giving you this test, if He's giving you this trial and this struggle, and you know that He loves you, and you know that He is forgiving and merciful and compassionate, then it will help you to understand a bit better and to be okay with that adversity. Struggle builds character. So what is this struggle? What is this difficulty teaching you? What is it giving you? You may not recognize it now, but understanding that it's okay to not know. As human beings, we feel we need to be powerful. We need to be in control. We need to know every single thing that's going on. But it's about us trusting in the one who created us. Trusting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created me. He knows what I'm capable of. He knows what I can handle. I know His promise is true, that He will never give someone a burden that they cannot bear. So I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me this because He has faith in me, right? He knows that I'll be able to get through this with the resources that He's given me. And if I don't have it within me, which I believe each and every person has it within them, subhanAllah, when I work with people in my therapy room, what I see is strength. What I see is resilience, even when they don't see it themselves. And so what I do is to help them to see that you're going through this because you have the tools. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the tools to get through it. You just don't see that or don't realize it. And sometimes you need an external person to help you to see that and to realize that. We know that Aisha radiallahu anha said that the Prophet ﷺ said, for any adversity a Muslim suffers, Allah erases some of his sins, even though it may be no more than a thorn pricking him. And so it's for us to think of these types of things when we're going through hardship, that my sins are being erased, and that's just one aspect of it. But overall, it is Allah has given me this for a reason and for a purpose. And that can give us that strength and resilience to push forward, to continue, and to never give up. Number 2 is to build a team around you. It's so essential to have a support network. Whether it's your family members, or it's community members, or it's a random stranger sometimes, or a professional. It's so important to have that built around you. Who is somebody who lifts you up? Somebody who reminds you of your strength and your courage and your resolve. That's somebody to keep around. And if you don't have that person, it's to reach out to a professional who can remind you of those qualities in yourself. So look around you and think about who is your support team. Who is there who's going to lift you up? If you're going through the biggest struggle of your life, maybe it's severe depression. Oftentimes we don't feel comfortable opening up to people and telling people, like, I feel like I'm depressed. Who is that person that you can call, that you can reach out to, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and let them know that you're going through a depressive episode, and they will show up. They will show up for you, and they will be there for you. So it's making sure that you have that person, and if you don't, to reach out for it. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that the believing men and believing women are allies of one another. And so as a community, it's for us to be that for each other. If we think back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ and in Medina and how there was this camaraderie and support and people were there for each other, how do we rebuild that in our community? And one way that I truly believe that we can rebuild that in our community is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the strength and the courage to open up about yourself so that the person next to you feels comfortable opening up about themselves. So it's okay to say that I'm struggling, I'm going through something. I have depression too. You know, my marriage isn't the most amazing thing. It's okay to say that to your friend, to your loved one, to your family member. And this will actually maybe help another person feel comfortable opening up. Hey, I'm going through that too. And then you start to talk about it and you find support in each other. So think about it, and as a community, let's figure out ways that we can support each other better. Number 3 is focusing on the positive. And this doesn't mean dismiss the hardship that you're going through. This is where people get a little confused about, if I'm supposed to focus on the positive, this means dismissing the negative. And a lot of people deal with difficult emotions by shutting them out. Nowadays we have the screen at our fingertips. And it's very easy to get lost in that screen. Whether it's Facebook or Instagram or YouTube videos or news articles or anything, we can easily get lost in that. So it's important for us to recognize how much time we are spending, and more than that, why are we spending so much time on these devices? What are we shutting out? What are we trying to avoid? What are we not facing? It seems sometimes very easy just to shut out the difficult emotions and just go on my screen, or shut out a difficult relationship. I don't want to talk to my spouse if we're fighting, so I'll just be on the screen, because it puts a physical barrier between you and your spouse. It puts a physical barrier between you and your child. So ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? What am I trying to avoid? And it's not easy to uncover those things. Believe me, it takes courage, it takes strength, it takes resolve to be able to say, I'm going to move the rug, and I'm going to see the mess underneath, and I'm going to face it. And so it's about recognizing the struggles that I'm going through and acknowledging them, that I'm human and I'm going through a tough time, and that's okay. But I have to face it and recognize it and be able to move forward from that. But it does also help to focus on the positive. It doesn't mean eliminate the negative, but it helps us to transform into, a positive direction. The Prophet ﷺ said that how amazing is the case of the believer. There is good for him in everything, and this is only so for the believer. If he or she experiences something pleasant, they're thankful, and that's good for them. And if they come across adversity, they're patient, and that is good for them. So this tells us exactly how to be in those situations. When there's good, we're grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our words, in our actions, and in our hearts. The 3 different ways of shukr, right? And then if there's difficulty, patience. And we talked about patience. It's not just sitting back and waiting for something, but it's moving forward. It's pushing through the pain. It's persevering. It's trying to do something to make a change in our situation. Oftentimes in therapy, I ask people, when did when did you first notice this problem? When did this issue start? And unfortunately, I have way too many people who tell me years ago, months ago. And I ask them, what took so long for you to come in? And a lot of times, it's the fear, it's the stigma against therapy, it's the negative assumptions that we have. But when an issue arises, it's so essential for you to face it right away. Because when couples come into therapy, and I'm working with them, couples, families, everybody, and they tell me that the issue started a few weeks ago, it's much easier to help them through that than a couple who says, we've been married for 10 years and the issue started the day after we got married. So that's 10 years of issues and resentment and the silent treatment and all of that it's never hopeless. There's always hope. Nothing is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it takes that much more work to get through those 10 years. So when you notice a difficulty, when you notice a hardship, when there's something that you just can't figure out, it doesn't mean that you are incapable. It doesn't mean that you have something deficient about you when you reach out for help. It just means that you care enough about yourself and your family members and your situation to make a change. Number 4 is to label your emotion, to understand it. Is it depression? Is it anxiety? Is it trauma? You know, and I've done a lot of training in trauma, and the majority of things when people come in, it comes from a traumatic experience that they went through, either in childhood or adolescence or even adulthood. And often that gets overlooked. Why am I so insecure? Why do I get angry right away? Why am I not able to be patient? A lot of times it stems from a traumatic experience. But if you don't know that about yourself, how will you ever resolve the anger? When we go to anger management, for example, which anger management is very surfacey, right? It's touching the anger. The anger is the symptom, it's not the disease. The anger is the symptom, and the disease can be anything else. It can be a traumatic experience, it can be insecurity. And oftentimes, anger it stems from fear or pain. So when you're feeling angry, that can be a really good tool that I'm giving you to have insight about yourself. When you're feeling angry, what is my pain or what is my fear that I'm feeling right now? And then you can acknowledge it and you can soothe it. You can self-soothe. Self-soothe your pain, self-soothe your fear that you're feeling, and that will help you individually and in your relationships, inshallah. So label that emotion, know what it is. And this is essential for kids, to help them to label that emotion. What are you feeling right now? I don't know. There's so many teens who say, I don't know. And in my office, I don't allow, I don't know. You've got to have that answer. Is it frustration? Is it fear? Is it worry? You got to know yourself to change yourself. You got to know yourself to deal with all the struggles that you're gonna face. Number 5 is to choose new stories. We often tell ourselves negative stories. Oh, I'm never gonna get out of this debt because I'm just meant to suffer financially forever. I'm never gonna be happy because I'm meant to be in an unhappy marriage. And so that can lead us to hopeless thinking. So it's thoughts, emotion, behavior, right? So the negative thought of, I'm never gonna get out of this bad marriage, leads to the emotion of sadness, depression, worthlessness, hopelessness, and then there's the behavior. I can't get out of bed. I don't feel like taking a shower. I don't feel like going to therapy or working on my relationship or making a change. So when we can get to the source, which is the thought, we can really make a change in what we're going through. So change that story. I'm never gonna get out of this relationship. Change that story from the start. That nothing is impossible for Allah. I may be struggling with this right now, but He will get me through it. He will get me through this and past this and beyond this into a better place. So now, what is that emotion going to be after that? It's going to be a little bit of uplifting, a little bit of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you feel better. And now, with that hope, now the behavior will be better. Number 6, start a journal. Number 7, exercise. Number 8, get out in nature. Number 9, celebrate your summits. And this is your successes. Be able to acknowledge your success and celebrate it, as well as in your children. We have too much criticism, too much negativity in parenting, and that has to change, because it is creating a society of broken kids who just don't believe in themselves. We're doing it to ourselves and we're doing it to our children. So we have to transform that into positivity, encouragement, and love. That's what kids need. And that's what we need, really, as human beings. So being able to celebrate successes. And subhanAllah, there's something that as believers we get afraid of, and it's arrogance. Right? We're afraid of arrogance. We're afraid of feeling too much pride. And there's a reason for it, right? We don't want to have even that ounce of pride. But I tell people that I work with in therapy, and I'll tell all of you, there is a scale. There's, on this side, there's self-loathing and self-hatred and the worthlessness. And then on the other side of the scale is that arrogance and pride and grandiose and narcissism. The goal is the middle. The goal is that self-acceptance and self-love and self-appreciation. It doesn't mean that we're arrogant. It means that we encourage ourselves and we build ourselves up. Number 10, and I'm definitely not getting through 20, so I'll just end at 10, is number 10 is seek out new summits. And what is this? Set out goals for yourself. Set out things that you want to achieve. And I've taken a dua course with Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif, and I've always mentioned it, I think, in every one of my talks, because it was helpful in the sense of your goals can become your dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And you believe in that dua being answered, right? Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am as my servant thinks I am. It's for us to have the best opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I would like to achieve this. And yes, we're talking about trials and tribulations, because I would like to get out of this mess that I'm in. I would like to feel better. I want to be happy. I want to be healthy. I want to get out of this struggle. Are you asking Allah for it? Are you making dua for it in your tahajjud prayer, which is like the arrow that never misses the target? If we really wanted something, we would pray for it then. And so write out everything that you want. The small things, the